Hi everyone, welcome back to Flueness Pages. I am continuing to discuss poetry on the CIE GCSE English Literature curriculum for 2022, and today we're talking about verses written on her deathbed at Bath by Mary Monck. First, let's start with the author biography, then the summary, and then move on to the line-by-line analysis. She was the daughter of a lord and very well educated. She had a knowledge of Latin, Italian, and Spanish literature. There's not a lot known about her, so let's talk about the context briefly before moving on. As she was dying, her husband George Monck was not there. He was in another town. People used to travel to Bath in the hopes of healing, so that's what she did. But then, while separated from her husband, she began to feel like she was dying, so she wrote this letter in verse. Mary Monck shares her dying words with the man she loves. She asks him to please let her go and to not grieve too much because while of course she will miss her dying husband whom she loves so much, she doesn't want him to be sad while she's gone. She is awaiting her final moments and she recognizes that her journey is over, and her emotional letter written in verse demonstrates her powerful personal voice and the amount of love that she feels for George Monck. The mood is melancholy and at the same time nostalgic, almost looking back and reflecting on life, and at the same time even happy because while of course she recognizes that this is it, there's a sort of happiness in knowing that she will be reunited with her husband eventually and that she will die as she always was, his wife. She remains with a positive outlook on life, wanting to make her husband happy even now in her final last moments, and she really reflects and thinks about the life that she has lived and on the power of love that's enough to keep her here, and especially the love that she feels for her husband. And it's for sure a testament to the strengths of character that Mary Monck possesses, that in her final moments she does not wish to stay. She only thinks about what her husband will feel after she's gone because she values his partnership emotionally and everything that they have been through together. First, a quick comment on the structure, and you can feel free to just quickly skim over the poem one more time and remind yourself. There are 22 lines, no breaks, as in no separate stanzas, but I will be splitting my analysis into quatrains and couplets, and the rhyming scheme is A-B-B. You can pair up the majority of the lines together, and this is called a heroic couplet. Very appropriate, of course, since the focus of the poem is the couple. The meter is a iambic pentameter, the meter of love, and it is generally a very steady beat, showing the strengths of the emotions that Monck feels. Thou, who dost all my worldly thoughts employ, thou pleasing source of all my earthly joy, thou tenderest husband, and thou best of friends, to thee this first, this last adieu I send. Straight away we are made familiar with the subject of the poem with the pronoun thou. It is the first word, and thou of course means you, and we see that it occupies her thoughts throughout the entire poem. So as you can see, the next few lines also begin with thou, thou who dost all my worldly thoughts employ, thou pleasing source, and thou tenderest husband. And thou is repeated, and this method is called anaphora. This really strengthens her husband's presence in the poem. He is at the forefront of everything, quite literally, and as Monck says, he definitely occupies her worldly thoughts. In her final moments, in all her thoughts, she can only think about the happiness and the joy that he brings her, because he is her husband, he is her best friend, he is everything. The role is occupied by him, and this poem is for him. He is everything, he's all the roles for her. She lists his roles to really show just how much he does, and this is why he occupies her thoughts. This is why he is everywhere. But even with all of this, already she's beginning to employ adjectives like earthly and worldly to gently prepare him for what's to come. Her separation from this earth, her separation from this world, her beginning to journey to another stage in her life where he can't follow her. Last week I talked about antithetical parallelism, where basically the structure is the same, just the meaning is different, and the two words and two sentences are placed side by side to show contrast. And as you can see with the worldly and the earthly, there is already a lot of contrast taking place throughout this poem. This first, this last adieu, this is the antithetical parallelism, and you might be confused about why this is her first adieu. This is because she shows that this letter and this poem is the first and the last time that she gets to say goodbye, because this is the only goodbye that really matters in her life. Because with all the other goodbyes, she was certain that she could come back and that she could perhaps repeat it and say it again. But this is it. She doesn't get another chance. Her husband is far away. He can't make it. So she must use only herself and her words to carry her final meaning. And of course, this is the last goodbye, because after she dies, this is it, and there will be no more. At length, the conqueror Death asserts his right, and will forever veil me from thy sight. He woos me to him with a cheerful grace, and not one terror clouds his meagre face. So here we see the personification of Death. He's portrayed as powerful and as in the right, showing that Monk believes that this is it, this is her time. Yes, he's this conqueror, this all-powerful being, but he is not taking her by force because he recognizes that this is it, her journey is over, and she must accept it. So it's not a violent conquering, because both the speaker and Death seem to be happy about it, although perhaps for different reasons. And we have also a sense of competition, because the veil, of course, marriage, right? So we have this transition. It's almost as if she's marrying Death now instead of her husband, and it's this alternative reality to what she has here. Again, it's this transition, this transformation of her as a person, as a being. She's leaving this world, but what remains the same, of course, that she is his faithful wife. Veil is also sometimes used to describe the fabric of the world, so it is perhaps an allusion to that. And Death is this cheerful and loving and polite lover who is seducing her with his movements. He shows Monk the allure of death. He urges her to not be afraid. He calms her down because he is okay with everything, and he tells her that they will make this journey together. He promises a lasting rest from pain and shows that all life's fleeting joys are vain. The eternal scenes of heaven he sets in view and tells me that no other joys are true. The speaker enjoys living and she enjoys love, but there has been pain in her life, and she of course acknowledges this, she remembers this pain is vivid for her, and she references this in what she's saying. However, this pain is not important for her right now, because as she looks ahead, all that she can see is the everlasting joys. The fleeting joys are vain too. The only true happiness is the happiness that she will find up there with God, is what Death shows her, but as we'll see in a second, she resists this message. She doesn't really give in to his coaxing, because he's showing her these heavens, he's beckoning her to go, and even as she sees this pleasure, this relief from all the pain, it's in her direct sight, but she cannot let go. And she doesn't let go because she has a goal in mind, and her goal is to write this letter to her husband, and so we see the power of love. But love, fond love, would yet resist his power, would fain a while defer the parting hour. He brings thy morning image to my eyes, and would obstruct my journey to the skies. Now the speaker personifies love, and portrays love as him, as the only person powerful enough to stop death. Here also is something to comment on in the personal response. Monk sees both love and death as him, as a male. Is it because she sees her husband as her true love, so she makes love a male, and the reason that she sees death as a him as well is because they're her two husbands, right? So they're the two people who she loves most, and of course she potentially sees everything through the lens of her husband. A diascope is a phrase where certain words are repeated with other words in between. So this is the first line, like love, fond love, and of course here we see the intenseness of love and the power of love, and the stanza starts with a contradiction, but, and so once again Monk draws our attention to this sharp juxtaposition between love and death, the fierce opponents, the love that can still keep her chained to this earth because she cannot in good conscience leave and go and enjoy herself. But say, thou dearest, thou unwearied friend, say, shouldst thou grieve to see my sorrows end? Thou know'st the painful pilgrimage I've passed, and shouldst thou grieve that rest is come at last? So again, we revert to the husband and to the thou. As you can see, this poem takes several twists and several turns, but the underlying message is always the same. It's always her husband who occupies all her thoughts. I'm trying to repeat this quite a few times because this is the main message, and I really want to make sure that you see that this is infused in every line and every word that Mary Monck speaks. So an apostrophe, back on task, an apostrophe is both a punctuation mark and a literary device. So as a literary device, it is used when you are talking about something that is not really there. So here we see that Mary Monck's husband is of course not here, right? Because otherwise she would have said this. He's far away and she's writing this letter, but at the same time she's constantly addressing him, she's constantly using thou, constantly thinking about him, as she says at the very start of the poem. and so he is almost there. We can almost feel him, but it's that very tangible difference between recognizing that he's not there. And so once again, we see a contrast in the reality and the idea. He's her unwearied friend, not tired, and she wants him to remain here because this is his job. He is the unwearied one. He's the one that must remain after she is gone. And let's talk about Aporia for a second. So she urges him not to grieve for her with Aporia. So the three literary devices, the rhetorical question, the hypophora, and the aporia. Okay, so hypophora is when you ask a question and then you answer straight away. Or should I be saying hypophora? It's when you ask a question and then you answer it straight away. A rhetorical question is more obvious. It's less sincere. It's more like implied that you know the answer. So hypophora is like the more direct. Rhetorical is more like in between. And aporia is genuine doubt. It's sincerity. It's just asking a question that maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't. It's speculation. It's what you think, but also you don't know. So for her husband, with the questions she asks, the obvious answer is like, yes, I'm gonna grieve you, I love you too. But for her, she doesn't think that he should do it, right? Because she is asking him this, she's urging him to question himself with the hopes that he'll come to the conclusion that she's happy, so, well, he should be happy too. But at the same time, there is that element of doubt because she doesn't want him to not grieve at all, right? Because I mean, they love each other, so she doesn't want him to just move on and forget about her. But at the same time, that's exactly what she wants. So again, we have contradiction upon contradiction because she wants to be recognized, but she also wants him to live his life with joy as she will live her life with joy. She has no problem letting go, and she wants him to remember her, of course, but also to live healthily and to be unwearied as he is now. She also repeats the words and repeats the question, showing her desperation for an answer, to know in her final moments to be able to let go, but of course he's not here, so she must go with that question still present in her mind. And she also remarks that her husband knows that this is like a painful pilgrimage. Her life was like a painful pilgrimage, and the sharpness of the diction of the praise painful pilgrimage, the alliteration, the sharp plosive piece, it leaves a very bitter residue. It's a very harsh sound, quite appropriate considering what it represents. So this paints an image of her finally leaving this arduous journey behind. Her pilgrimage is complete, her final stage is now here. Rather rejoice to see me shake off life, and die as I have lived, thy faithful wife. So now she directly offers him advice. She tells him that he should be happy for her because ultimately she is happy to go because she is satisfied with the life that she has lived, and she is most happy that she gets to keep her label as his faithful wife. Her thoughts even now with him, and she makes sure that this is her final words, that this is it, I will always remain faithful to you, I have always loved you, and I always will, but this is it, this is another stage in our journey. And as part of your personal response, I think you should comment on whether you think this is a happy poem. Personally, I feel like there are happy elements and there are sad elements to it, of course, and the important thing is that you get the message that for her, George Monck is the single most important person in her life, and he occupies every single word that she says because she constantly thinks about him and she has lived her life with him and she is utterly faithful to him. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I really hope this video helped. I hope I explained slowly and relatively concisely and also clearly. Trying not to waste your time. Let's keep preparing for the exams. I'm sure you will all do great. See you next week. No, see you this week. I keep forgetting I do 2 videos now to try and fit everything in before the exam. So see you this week and hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you. Bye.